Welcome to Late Bloomers, where we are getting our lives together eventually.
Yes, we are.
Today we're talking about late bloomers. Is that
How
right?
to actually be a late bloomer and what one is.
Well, let's start there. What on earth is a late bloomer?
Somebody that gets their life together a little bit later than what might be expected. So it might be starting a business later in life, finding love later in life, essentially like finding your potential after maybe messing up your life.
For the record, though, you are later in life than me, aren't you? So, like, you're.
I am, no, a year older than you.
That's not a no, that's still a yes. So, like,
Well,
you.
technically, I'm in my 40s, and because you're 39, you are in your 30s.
Exactly. I'm just a
I'm fine with
whippersnapper.
that. 40s is the golden age. I've never been happier.
Yeah. And this is obviously a big topic, and this is why we've named the podcast Late Bloomers, right? So why is it important? Why are we talking about it?
I think because in society, there is a crazy pressure to follow a timeline, to go to uni, to get a job, to get married, to have kids, to own a house. And I was so far away from that timeline. You end up feeling like you're failing, you feel ashamed, you feel like the world's most rubbish human. And actually, literally amazing stories can happen later in life. Amazing love stories and businesses and becoming parents and doing epic stuff. And I just think it's so important that people realize that just because it hasn't happened as a teenager or 20s or 30s or 40s doesn't mean it won't happen.
Never too late.
It's never too late. And even more than that, I would go even further and say it's not just that it's not too late and you've still got a chance. It's the perfect time
Yeah.
with your life experience, your resilience, your growth, your perspective. We actually need people that have been through stuff to come and bloom and find their thing.
And we have been through stuff, right? Like that is
We have been through a fair amount of
some
stuff.
stuff.
So obviously we're both sort of late bloomer type people.
Yep.
If you were to look at your life
Yep.
and pick the 3 areas where you've been a late bloomer, where it's like had the most epic impact, what would they be? And can we just hear a little bit about them?
I won't pick this one, but I reckon I've physically matured with age a
Oh.
little bit. Yeah.
What, you got hotter?
Yeah, I think so. Like I feel a bit like, do you know what I mean? That's not an all right thing
Well,
to say,
when
but
we met,
yeah.
you were very much like a dad. Like,
Oh, I am still a dad.
no, but now you're like a hot dad. You were just like a sort of, I can't explain it. Just, you had a sort of dad, little short back and sides. You was a bit chubby from all the drinking.
All right.
I loved you. That's how we fell in love.
Okay.
That was the
I've
version.
got tattoos and long hair now. I suppose that's
You've got
probably...
tattoos and long hair. So you found your personal style a bit later in life. What do you think? Why did you find that later in life? Why did you suddenly get late 30s and suddenly get loads of tattoos and grow your hair?
midlife crisis, and I started dating an emo. So I needed
So
to...
it's my fault.
Yeah. But in a good way. Like
In a
I love
good
in a
way.
good way. I love the look now.
But I didn't really get most of my tattoos until late 20s, early 30s. Dyed my hair blue in mid 30s.
Yeah.
So I was late blooming with identity as well. Isn't it
Yeah.
interesting?
Yeah. I'll give some serious answers now,
Okay.
actually, because although I do like my tattoos and long hair, I don't think that is going to be the main things. I think it's given me chance to think about the question as well. So the 3 areas I think that I've been a late bloomer, one would be professionally. So whilst I was doing okay, I worked in a bank, and I'd worked in the same company for 20 years, over 20 years, 21 years, I think, by the time I left.
Can't
And
relate, sorry.
yeah, and I bet you can't. And I'd worked my way up to a fairly senior level. I was in charge of a lot of people in a big building and in a big bank. But I hated it. So like you can't be successful if you hate your job, right? Like, or maybe
Oof.
you can. I don't know if that's an even okay thing to say, but I was miserable.
It depends what metric you use.
Yeah,
So you were earning a good salary.
yeah,
You could look after yourself and two kids, and rent was always paid. You had a company car.
yeah,
So if you're looking at it through that metric, you were successful. However, I think success has to also include personal joy and happiness. I was like, what is the point?
yeah,
What's the point of being successful if you hate your life?
yeah. And although I was, um, fairly successful if you use those metrics, I would deem myself to be a late bloomer professionally because one, I love my job now. So like we do this, we make videos on the internet. We've built an app. We've written a couple of books that have done fairly well, and I love it. Like so, financially, I'm outperforming what I used to do, but more importantly, I just love. It doesn't feel like a job. It just feels like life. Like I never thought that sitting in a podcast studio with a pink microphone would feel like would be a job. It just feels like fun, right? Like that's the win, I think.
Oh, if you can find a job that you love and feels like fun, and I reckon there's so many people that have got books inside them, TV shows,
Yeah,
Etsy businesses, being a parent, whatever it is, that thing that you may have put off or may have thought isn't for you anymore, and it still can be. I think the thing about your story that's so interesting is, for me, I always compared myself to the timeline. So my friends that went and got graduate jobs, got girlfriends, got married, had kids, bought houses.
yeah,
And I was so far behind and outside of that. I felt really left behind. But you did that.
yeah.
You had kids. You got married a couple of times.
N-
You bought a house. You had a steady job for 20 years. So, what's crazy to me is that your story actually shows, even if you follow the societal pressure, you still might not find your happiest life.
Yeah, and the thing is, although we do the same job and we're a partnership sort of professionally as well, I think we enjoy them for different reasons. We obviously enjoy the freedom and the time and stuff like that. But actually, when I was in my job in the bank, I wanted to run my own business. Like I thought running a business I'd be good at. What I was missing, and I always said it, I said it as a bit of a joke. I was like, I'd be good at running my own business. I just don't have any ideas. If someone could give me the ideas, I'll run it. And then wheel you in, you are full of ideas every hour. I was going to say every day, that wouldn't do it justice. Every hour. So like we've now got the ideas person and the person that actually executes the business side of things.
Dream team, basically. Okay, so
Basically, yeah.
your number one late bloomer is leaving a long term steady job to go and build your own business
Yeah.
and finding a lot of joy and, I guess, taking that risk, having that self belief, which is amazing. What is another area where you've been a late bloomer?
I think, and this is probably more important, but emotionally, I think I have bloomed late. Um,
What do you mean?
I, well, I was struggling with addictions, both gambling and alcohol. That was just to numb the fact that I wasn't emotionally available. I couldn't face things. So I obviously went and got some therapy, quite a lot of therapy. Thought I'd completed the level, by the way. Went for a few therapy sessions, was like, I'm cured now, I'm all fine. Stopped too early and ended up in bed with anxiety, like couldn't move, like quite debilitating. So went back to therapy. So for sort of two stints. But actually what it's done is just make me emotionally better, I suppose, more mature. I'm a better parent, which is probably the most important thing. I'm a better partner because we're not divorced. I've had two of those.
Third time lucky.
That said, we're not at the 7 year mark
It's
yet.
always 7 years. How
Yeah,
long?
but
I've got like 2 years left.
both relationships were 7 years. Yeah. But I'm pretty confident we're going to get through the seven
Fingers
year. Yeah,
crossed. I hope so.
we can hope. But I think all of that, none of that would have been possible if I didn't mature mentally.
So you're sort of saying therapy and emotional maturity. What does it look like to be emotionally immature? Maybe that's a bit shaming. What were you like before with emotions? Why was it an issue to you?
Well, I couldn't have deep conversations. I remember one of the first times we met, you asked me a question and I gave you such a like crap, arrogant answer.
When?
Like you used to do these check-in things where you could rate out of 10 how you were feeling or like how much you love yourself. And that was it. You were like, how much do you love yourself? And I was like 11.
Out of
Like,
10.
yeah, like still drinking, just an absolute idiot. Um, and like I couldn't go deep. It was all superficial conversations. I didn't really know how to parent. Not really, not because I wasn't in tune emotionally with myself, let alone have the ability to be in tune emotionally with my kids. So it was all very. I was probably best mates with my eldest. We would be drinking on a Friday night, playing video games. And my youngest, even today, right? It's great that she says it, but also brings a bit of sadness. Um, I don't snap anymore. She used to call me Snappy Daddy, is how she referred to me now. Like when things annoyed me,
Oh.
I would like snap and bark and stuff, and now I won't. Like, and I think I've got a better relationship with both of my kids now, hugely. And I could say it's sobriety. It's a bit of everything, and I think all of it wrapped up has just made me better emotionally.
I mean, that's what a beautiful place to be a late bloomer in
Yeah.
with a parent. And I think both your kids have shown it actually doesn't matter what age your parent comes back to connect with you, to be more attuned, to really be able to listen, to be able to express if they've pissed you off without shouting and
Yeah.
to have a really good convo. Because they're both so much happier.
Yeah.
And I can see that having been in their lives for the last few years, they're so much happier, they're so much calmer, there's so much more trust.
Don't argue with them at all.
There's no
Really.
arguing.
Yeah.
No, and I think that is so beautiful. That's what they call breaking the cycle.
Yeah.
So obviously work, it's so amazing to build a career that you absolutely love, but being an incredible parent, I don't know, that just
I wouldn't say I was an incredible parent. It's very
why
kind of you to say,
really?
yeah, like no, yeah. I think I'm pretty good, and I think they're pretty happy, and I think that is the best I can hope
Well,
for.
actually, in therapy, there's this thing people say which is about being a good enough
Yeah, yeah,
parent.
yeah.
And good enough doesn't mean, oh, you're just about being good. You're just about looking after them well enough. It means that good enough is actually the best option.
Yeah,
Because if you were a perfect parent, you don't show your kid how to fail, how to have struggles,
yeah,
how to process tough stuff. So actually being good enough is the best you can be.
yeah.
So I actually do think that you are pretty incredible. I think anybody that you had a very certain way of being with your kids, friends with the eldest and a bit snappy with the youngest, although there was a lot of love there, but you weren't really like emotionally in tune. You have fought so hard for that part. And I've watched you face your past, your own upsets, your own anger. Sometimes it's so difficult to realize when we have to change. And you've done that. So hats off, because I think that's one of the most important things you can do for a kid.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I'll say before moving on from being a parent, and I think that this would be advice. I'm not one to give advice, but this one I will. Um, One of the things I used to be with my kids was always right. I always believed I was right because I'm the parent. So sort of what I say is right, and that's it. Now I'm wrong loads, and having the ability to say I got that wrong. I'm sorry, and apologize to your kids is like gold dust because it's like yeah, I think about my littlest one. It's okay, Daddy, don't worry. But like, it teaches them such a valuable lesson of accountability.
Yeah.
Like that's the big thing for me.
Well, if you want your kids to take accountability, you have to model it.
Yeah,
And that's what you do. So amazing. So we have late blooming in your career
yeah,
as a parent.
yeah.
And what would be the third thing?
It's I don't want to sound cringe, but it's got to be you, hasn't it? It's got to be relationship late bloomer.
Oh,
2 divorces down. I don't want to be Ross Geller off of Friends. I think he was divorced 3 times. Um, and I think, it's not just clearly we're in a happy relationship, but beyond all measure, but we never argue. There's never conflict. There's always understanding. I think that is something that I never felt possible. And like a lot of this is going to be interlinked, right? Like I wouldn't be able to do it if I wasn't emotionally mature. And so it all sort of happens all together. But yeah, I think romantically, we're just like, we joke, don't we? Like it's cringe fest, but we're just like 4 little feet together doing the world. It's adorable
adorable and cringe.
and both cringe in equal measure.
But what do you think changed? Because when we very first met, I remember you saying to me, I've got no interest in love. I'm never getting married again. Like, I'm done. And you really meant it. Like, you
Yeah,
were
yeah, yeah, I did.
fully done. It was you, a few beers, your video game. That's all you
And then
needed.
you came along. Cheers. I had my perfect plan. What changed? It was a bit of everything. It was sobriety. It was, I think therapy was the big one.
Yeah.
Therapy was the one that took us from the honeymoon stage, which everyone is a victim of, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's everything. You're wonderful. You're the best person in the
Oh,
world.
yeah.
You're not. Neither am
No.
I. But like, we're amazing together. And it's like it was therapy and maturity and conversation and vulnerability and all of that stuff that we do. I think, well, better than anyone I know, anyway. Is what is that's where real happiness comes in, not the drug of the dopamine when you're first together. The real happiness is where we are now, I think.
Isn't it insane, though, to both of us live our whole lives never knowing that that sort of relationship or that love was available?
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of people that would never find, like, I know people, adults generation above me, that I look at and they definitely never found it. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying a perfect relationship, I'm just saying a truly connected one.
Yeah.
I just don't think, I think loads of people, unfortunately, that's really sad, but
Okay, so we've had your career, had sort of emotionally in you as a parent, and then we've had love.
yep,
3 awesome areas to be a late bloomer.
yep,
To ask you one question
yep.
about all of those, what is something that failure has taught you that success couldn't? So, what has divorce taught you? What has working a job you hated for 20 years taught you? What has being snappy daddy taught you?
I suppose, I don't want to be oversimplistic, but it's how not to do it, right? Like, how not to, because without that, I wouldn't have learned. Like, I sometimes look at these people that have never needed therapy and they're all just like happy and going through life, like happy as Larry. And
Weird.
it's like, whatever. But I'm not, I'm not jealous of them because they don't have the same level of knowledge that I do about getting through it and the gratitude that comes with that, whether that be professionally, whether that is as a parent. The people that are just great and securely attached and don't struggle with mental health issues, I'm happy for them, but I wouldn't want to be them because I honestly think like the good for me now is better than it could be because of where I've come from.
That's incredible. I feel exactly the same. You learn so much in the trenches.
Mhm.
You learn so much when it goes wrong. So I guess I'll do My three
Yes, come on, I
now.
can't wait.
I'm a late bloomer in every area.
The latest
The
bloomer.
latest bloomer. When I'm only 40,
No, but out of us two,
you got to stop banging on
I can't
about.
stop. I'm sorry.
Stop. Okay, so number one is going to be career. And obviously we, built a social media project together. We do this together. We've written books together. That was way out of left field. Never knew that was happening.
Yeah.
So although, yes, like I have late bloomed in that area, I never dreamt of it. It was totally just like a wild card. So that just feels like a bonus. I
Mhm.
love all this. I love working with you. It's unbelievable. But the area where I've been a late bloomer is in music
Mhm.
because I have tried and failed so many times. I had my Roxanne Emery project. I had a little band called Seams. I had Holy Waters. I've managed loads of artists. I've run a record label. I've been a songwriter. I've always been around and I've always seen myself as failing. I wasn't failing. I was actually learning on the job, but I put so much pressure on myself to succeed that when it didn't happen for me, I saw it as failure. But actually, I needed to go through all of that to be here now. Music is notoriously a bit ageist, especially towards women, female presenting people. So to go back to music at, I think I was 36, 37
Yeah.
when I joined TikTok is so ridiculous.
Mhm.
You just don't do it. Like you settle down into being a songwriter where you're supposed to be. And that's it. You stop dreaming. But I didn't for some reason. I came back to be an artist.
An actual rock star. Let me just say, like, I don't know whether you would say it or not, but
I
like,
don't think
I
I'm.
was
No,
at the festivals and at them stages, and it was insane the amount of people screaming your music. Like, legit are a rock star now, even if
I
you don't want
don't
to say it.
think I'm. I think I'm like a level 1 rock star,
I'm
maybe.
still a rock star. You're still in the arena.
So that's insane. So if I look to myself at 36, newly sober, in debt, single, hating myself, full of shame, I looked really different. I would never, ever, ever, ever have dreamt of standing on stage at Download, having thousands of people. To get from that
Yeah.
person like that was so low to this person living their dreams.
So
It's
why
wild.
is it, why go from loads of failed artist projects to this one working then? What?
So obviously sobriety.
Yeah.
This is the first project I've done sober. Therapy, dealing with some of my biggest traumas and pains that really helps me to not self-destruct. Like I'm really focused on the goal and I work really hard
Mhm.
and I'll never block my blessings now, whereas I used to. And you're like the energy. No, I'm the energy behind it, but you
You've got
keep us
enough
going the right
energy.
way.
Yeah.
You do all the sort of finances, you drive the van, you help sell merch. If I want to spend too much money on a music video, you help me to see that I need that to make the next record. So you're a huge support. I couldn't do it alone. I also have an amazing team now. But when I did it before, when I made my first album, I was alone. It was like me
Yeah.
alone. It's so sad to think about.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is, I never ever knew it was going to work. I never knew I'd be on stage or I'd be going on tour or selling vinyls, doing an album. I just knew that I had to try again.
Glad you did.
I'm so
Your
glad I did.
fans are certainly glad you did.
I'm so glad that I did. But yeah, I guess
So career
it's,
for number one for you.
but there's something more I want to say about that, which is, like on X Factor, they have the over 25 category.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the sympathy category. Like, oh, they've been working a normal job and they're coming back for one last chance at 25. And I am 40, right? It almost makes you feel like you have something to be ashamed about
Yeah.
and that you're coming back begging, shoulders down.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm a bit older. What I have learned is my age is my superpower. I've got 2 decades worth of stories to sing about.
Yeah.
I don't care what people think about me. So I'm going to show up with my hairy armpits and my rock songs about trauma. I don't care whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
I am never going to quit on myself. My alcohol days are behind me. My rock and roll days, fake rock and roll days are behind me. And now I'm focused on the real ones. It is a superpower. So I just think, like, to anyone listening that's waiting, that's down on themselves, thinking they've missed their chance, this isn't about a sympathy, try at it again. It's about what if you actually have the tools to be your most powerful iteration because of everything you've been through.
Inspiring. That's a solid start for your number one.
Oh,
I
gosh.
don't know how you're going to follow that. So what's number 2?
You, and I'm not just saying that because you said me, I had 10, you had 2 divorces. I had 10 back-to-back overlapping relationships
Mm-hmm.
where I always thought I was in love, it was going to last, would move in, and then it wouldn't. I never made it past a year. Once I got to 3 years, actually, but all the others were about a year.
What are we now?
5?
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at us.
On your timeline, we've got 2 years left, Sam.
But I'm smashing your timeline.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, okay.
You are. So to go from that, someone that just was constantly changing partners, to finding actual, like, real safety, security, love, family. Because when I met you, a little buy one, get 2 free situation, I also became a stepmom. And I'd always sworn I never, ever, 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 ever wanted kids. No interest. Nada. Never even considered it.
Yeah.
And I was using occasionally dating apps. I'd always make sure no kids.
So we wouldn't have even, you would have swiped, what way do you have
You
to
wouldn't have
swipe?
even come up because you wouldn't
Wow.
have been. Also, I would have said over 6 foot. So you would have
Oh,
been.
hang on a minute. That's below the belt, isn't it? That's because of the age thing, isn't it?
No, I'm telling the truth. I'm trying to make a point
That
that.
is brutal. But you're only little.
I know.
Right.
I know. So I would have said over 6 foot, no kids. And in putting
Brilliant.
those judgments, I'd have missed the absolute greatest love of my entire life. So I mean it as a inspiring thing to maybe people that are single, like, loosen the shackles of your expectations, because love can come in 5 for 8 packages.
Oh.
But yeah, I think in the same way you spoke about being able to communicate, apologize, be vulnerable, I could never do that. Vulnerability for me was crying when I was drunk or high.
Yeah.
It wasn't true vulnerability, which,
Now you just cry sober.
I cry all the time now.
Yeah.
I'm a big crier,
Big time.
which is so crazy because when I was younger, I identified as, like, unemotional, super strong, people that cry a week. I sort of made myself a little mini version of my dad, and I thought I was really cool.
Yeah.
Like, inside, I was.
That's probably more common than we would think, people wearing that mask.
You were probably wearing that mask
100%.
too. I guess it's unfortunately more expected in men,
Yeah.
whereas for women, you're almost expected to be emotional, and I was just stone cold.
Yeah.
Not unless I was drunk.
Yeah.
So yeah, figuring out how to communicate, talk, love, stay, argue, tiny bit, repair, raise kids together, all the things parenting brings up. I mean, it's just been wild, but I occasionally will just have happy tears. I'll look around and I'll see you and the kiddies, Rocket, and I can't believe that me, this grand old mess who ruined their entire life, hurt myself so much, was in debt, broken relationships, no career to speak of, has ended up in part of this beautiful family. Like, I feel very, very lucky.
I think you should be proud though. Like, it's probably for a different episode, but we haven't had this relationship that's just been all roses from day one. We nearly broke up. Because
That's definitely
yeah, that's another one.
You're trying to get me back for the 5 for 8,
Yeah, I
aren't
am,
you?
because you fancy someone else, but
I
whatever.
did. It's an old pattern.
I know, yeah, but that's
No
why you should be.
shame.
That's why you should be proud, right? Like, because
Okay.
as a late bloomer, that would have been it. That would have been the end of what that would have been lucky number 11
I
at
dealt
that
with
point.
the same pattern I'd always dealt with,
Yeah.
which was leaving,
Hmm.
falling in love with someone else and leaving. But I dealt with it differently, and we will speak about that on another episode. The third area where I've been a late bloomer is just like adulting.
Mm.
I now own a house at 39. Before owning a house, I've rented, I've been evicted. When we met, I was struggling to pay £300 a month rent.
Yeah.
And my life has always been like that. I've never had security at home. I've always had a terrible credit rating.
Not now.
It's excellent now. Fall in love with a bank manager. I laugh about it, but honestly, the weight of being in debt and not having a house, not having a phone that connects, it only connects to Wi-Fi, not having a passport. I didn't have a passport for 2 years. Just all those things that felt insurmountable to me at the time, but just made me feel like such a terrible human being. Because what adult doesn't have a passport? What adult doesn't have their own house? Like, I just felt so ashamed and I hated myself so much for it.
They're all things like you take for granted, right? Your bills being paid by direct debit, you just having a passport until you haven't. And I can't relate, but I can imagine that can be quite jolting.
Oh, it's so jolting. I've sat in a flat before where I haven't been able to pay the electricity bill, had my electricity box ripped out and replaced with a pay-as-you-go meter,
Yeah.
haven't been able to go and pay it at the shop. So I've just sat in the pitch black in a
Yeah.
flat. And that happened to me a lot. That was when I was about 30. And you just feel on the edge. You feel on the edge of not wanting to be here anymore.
Probably restricts you being able to do other stuff. You can't flourish in other areas of your life, like professionally, if you're worrying about the lights being
If you're
switched off.
sat in the
Do you know what I mean?
dark, like
Yeah.
my biggest problem was that day is, can I find a coffee shop to connect to Wi-Fi to tell my friend I'm sat in the dark?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe she'll bring £5 so I can turn the lights on. And that's crazy. That's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That was where I was 10 years ago. Now, 10 years is not that long, but it's lifetimes ago for me. And I just think of anyone in that situation without a passport, without their phone connected, unable to pay electricity, unable to pay rent, getting evicted. Your greatest hope in that moment is just to not be in debt anymore, to
Mm.
have the lights on. That's your greatest dream. So I wouldn't even dreamt of meeting you, owning a house, having a music career. You don't even allow yourself to dream
Yeah.
because you just need to get £10 to top up the electricity meter.
Yeah.
So it steals hope, it steals love, it steals joy. And it really, really messes with your mental health because the shame and torture of being in that situation with no one to help, I had no one to call because I was still sort of going out partying. I'd always find a way a credit card or a mate would pay. So I'd go out drinking and then come back to a blackout flat.
Phew. Okay, so out of those three things then, like what is it about those situations that you learn that you otherwise wouldn't?
To keep trying. That resilience is an unbelievable skill. So to have 10 failed relationships and to try again with you and it be amazing, to have all the failed music careers, to try again, keep trying. But it isn't only trying, it's you have to try again whilst doing something different.
Yeah.
So I was in therapy with you, working on all the reasons why I normally leave a relationship. Also my issues with music and why I might self-destruct it and not work really hard. So yeah, I think failure teaches you to be resilient, that you have to keep trying, that you really want something, to go back and look for love or a career. Shows you that you really, really, really want it if you're willing to fail again.
And I think that's probably quite a nice moment to sum up probably both conversations in being late bloomers. You know, we've both shared what it's meant for us and our personal circumstances. But one thing that I really think about through all of them is it takes action, right? Like none of it just happens. So whether it be professionally, whether it be getting more functional, whether it be being more emotional and taking that first step to therapy, there's things that are in your control of taking that first step, I guess.
Yeah, so I think it's understanding your past, however messy, does not define your future.
Yeah,
Your actions do. So wherever you are, however low you are capable of the happiest life, relationship, job, wildest dreams coming true if you are willing to do the brutal hard work of changing your actions, which might look like going to therapy, it might look like getting sober.
yeah,
And also the fact that success isn't linear. I always had this sense of, I've missed the boat, it's too late. Even if I start now in love or career or finances, I'm so far behind, what's the point?
yeah.
But when you start later, you can be supercharged.
And you've
It,
got stuff to say, right? You learn from all of
oh,
this. It's not wasted. You just know how not
you've
to do
got
it.
so much to say. So I think it's about understanding it isn't linear, and you could start today, you could start really late, and you could far out succeed what you might have done when you were younger, or somebody else on a more linear path.
Yeah.
Like truly the sky's the limit, and it comes down to, are you going to try again? Are you going to have hope, and are you going to make a change?
So on that note, I think we'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, go and leave us a review wherever you listen. If you didn't, don't bother. Just skip through.
Just move on, like and follow and all that jazz. And thank you so much. We'll see you next week.